Today on Northern Revolutions, I'm going to go over my top 10 favorite pickups for 2022. So stay tuned. Hey Ivana community, welcome to Northern Revolutions. I'm Rob. Welcome back if you're returning. Welcome if you're new. Recording this on Boxing Day. So Merry Christmas, everybody. I hope everyone had a wonderful holiday. I've seen a lot of videos in the last week or so, people doing sort of year wrap-ups. So I'm gonna do the same. I'm gonna take a look at my top 10 favorite albums that I have picked up over the course of the last year. Hope you find it interesting. All right, starting off at number 10, No Doubt's Return of Saturn. This is an album that came out in 2000, and to the best of my knowledge, that was the only time it was pressed on vinyl. I was in a music store in a town not too far from where I live because I had some time to kill during the workday in between sales calls, so I thought I'd go in, and they happen to have this still sealed, and they only wanted $30 for it. So I grabbed it. I like this album. I said before, I think this was the last good No Doubt record. Only a couple hits on here, I think. Ex-Girlfriend and Simple Kind of Life, I think, were the only hits off of this. This was the sequel to Tragic Kingdom. Had never ever seen it anywhere on vinyl before, so I grabbed it. And apparently, it's hard to find. Never any on eBay. Not very many listings, typically on Discogs. So this was a real score for me. Love the album. Glad I found it. Was lucky to find it. So number 10, No Doubt's Return to Saturn. Number 9 is an album that I did a video that I called, I think it was like Records I Don't Think I'll Ever Own. And this was in that video, and then I found it. Bon Jovi's Crush. This came out in, I want to say like late 90s, because I remember maybe being in high school or early university when this came out and seeing the video for It's My Life on Much Music. This was issued on vinyl in 2012, I believe, and 2014. And it has been on my wish list for a long time. I've never seen it. They're always north of $100 on eBay or Discogs. And then I stumbled across a copy that someone had for sale cheaply. So I grabbed it, and it was still sealed. So of course I opened it and played it. I really like this record, actually, aside from the fact that, it has It's My Life on it. I love some of the other songs on here. Mystery Train, Captain Crash and the Beauty Queen from Mars, I Got the Girl, One Wild Night, Two Story Town, Next 100 Years. I love this whole record, actually. So never thought I would ever find it just because I'd never seen it and they're expensive. So number 9 is Bon Jovi's Crush. Number 8 was an album I picked up just this fall from an artist that earlier in the year I had never heard of before. This is Skye Wallace. This is her first record for Six Shooter Records. She had a few other independent releases. Six Shooter is my favorite label out of Toronto. I said when in another video where I talked about this record, this is one of the best rock records I've heard in maybe a decade. She's incredible. Thank God someone like her is making good, honest rock and roll. Crunchy electric guitars, powerful vocals. She sort of sounds like kind of like Heart almost, that sort of powerful, like Barracuda, that sort of powerful vocals. I was blown away by this album, and I'm still blown away by this album. So I'm thrilled. Some local Canadian female powerful rock and roll. Skye Wallace, terribly good. Number 7, Lisa Loeb's A Simple Trick to Happiness. I like this album. I really like Lisa Loeb, to be quite honest. But why this made my top 10 is I just went to buy this album from her web store, and they said, we're not shipping outside of the US due to COVID. So I emailed and just asked, is there any way we can make this happen? And Lisa's assistant got back to me and said, yep. And would you like it signed personally, like to Rob? And I said, absolutely. So I was just thrilled that, Lisa would take the time out to do this. That wasn't what I had initially wanted to get, but a hell of a bonus. So a personalized autograph album of an album that I was already looking for. And I've been a Lisa Loeb fan for years. So just number 7, Lisa Loeb. Number 6, of course, the Beatles have to appear in my list, but it's not what you think. It's not the Revolver Super Deluxe, because it's still sitting over there on my shelf. No. Number 6 is Sgt. Pepper. Looks rather unremarkable. What this is a UK mono first pressing. I've been working away at my UK first pressing Beatles albums for a while. Almost have them all. I really love Sgt. Pepper. I've said before, it's my favorite album of all time by anybody. So to finally get an original UK mono first press, that was always high on my list. And it's in really good shape. Yeah, it's a little bit tattered and torn, as one would expect for a 50-year-old album, but it plays really well. And so for me, this is the original album. I mean, it's not. I have in my mind that all the records from everywhere else in the world, even though the first pressings are knockoffs, they're not the real thing. Even though they are, that's just kind of how my mind works. The ones released in England was how the band intended. So for me, I finally have that copy of this album. So number 6, a UK first press of Sgt. Pepper. Number 5, we have a repeat artist on my list. Another Lisa Loeb record. Not because she's my favorite artist by any means, but there were 2 very unique records of hers that made my top 10. This is Tales. This was her album from 95 that had her breakout hit, Stay. This, like Bon Jovi's Crush, was on my list of records that I never thought I would own because they're rare and scarce and expensive. Well, this is not an original, but this is a pretty rare Japanese pressing that came out this year on like this weird clear pink yellow splattered vinyl. Very limited release. I jumped on it, and now these are going for, I've seen them listed for like $200, which is insane. And even these are now impossible to find, and they were only pressed back in, I don't know, May or June. So while it's not an original press of Tales, it's the only other pressing of Tales that is available and now quite hard to find. So I'm glad I jumped on this one. Number 5, Lisa Loeb's Tales. Speaking of hard to find albums that I never thought I'd own and then got re-released and I jumped on it. Number 4, Smashing Pumpkins' Melancholy and Infinite Sadness. They re-released this year as a 4 LP set. It had been done as a 3 LP set in the past. Crazy expensive, and even this is relatively expensive in and of itself. This wasn't cheap, but I got it a little cheaper than what market value is. But that's really irrelevant. This is a landmark album for me as a teenager in the 90s. So I never thought I'd own it on vinyl because they were impossible to find. So when they did re-release it this year in a very limited run, I made sure that I jumped on it. So it's like I said, a 4 LP box set. I'm thrilled to finally have this seminal album from my teenage years. So number 4, Smashing Pumpkins' Melancholy and Infinite Sadness. Number 3, Rodriguez at his best. I'm a big fan of Sixto Rodriguez. I have an original Australian pressing of Cold Fact. I have the reissue of Coming From Reality. For those of you that are not familiar with Rodriguez, check out the documentary Searching for Sugar Man. It's an incredible story. I won't spoil it for you. I've seen Rodriguez. I've met him very, very briefly. Someone commented in my Cold Fact video, and I apologize that I can't remember who it was at the moment, commented that Rodriguez was as big in Australia as he was in South Africa, which they kind of gloss over in the documentary. So while I didn't find a first pressing of Cold Fact from Australia, the viewer turned me on to this, which is called Rodriguez at His Best. Came out in the mid-70s. This is a first press. It's an amalgamation of songs from Cold Fact and Coming From Reality, and 3 songs that hadn't appeared on an album to that point. So I didn't even know this existed. So I'm glad that I have it. So I have an Australian, I have a South African, and then I've got, some modern reissues. So I'm still looking out for some other Rodriguez stuff, but I'm glad to add this to my collection. So number 3, Rodriguez at his best from Australia. Number 2 was something I picked up back in January of last year. So we're talking almost a full calendar year now. But this, I don't have enough words for how much I love this. I have said I am a huge fan of Adam Baldwin. I've talked about him many times. Guitar player from Dartmouth, Nova Scotia. He is kind of a big Springsteen fan, as you can tell. He's kind of got the look going there. This is his debut EP, which came out in 2013 on CD. And I love it. I love it, love it, love it, love it, love it. It's amazing. It's great. Springsteen-esque rock and roll with sort of a, East Coast twist. Incredible songs on here. Burning Man. If you want to look up any Adam Baldwin song, look up Burning Man. It's beyond words how amazing it is. Anyway, I never thought that CD, which was my favorite, would ever get released on vinyl. Well, lo and behold, last January it did. So I got my hands on a copy. Adam signed it for me. So one of my absolute favorite Canadian artists, and probably my favorite work in his discography. So finally available on vinyl. Number 2, Adam Baldwin's self-titled EP. And number 1 is a CD. I don't show a lot of CDs. I'm not really a big CD fan. I have a bunch over here, but generally don't buy them. And I think this is maybe the only CD that I've bought in several years. But it's an album that's only available on CD, and I never thought that I would own it. This is Grace Potter's solo debut from 2004. It was a self-released CD. I am a huge fan of Grace Potter and the Nocturnals. Was one of my favorite bands of all time. I've talked several times about them and why it's a shame that that band is no longer together. Spoiler, it's because I think Grace got a little full of herself. Nevertheless, this is her solo album prior to the Nocturnals, called Original Soul. While some of the Nocturnals play on this. It's a great record. I have it digitally, but I never thought that I would find a copy on CD, because for years, if you saw one, they were $100, $150, which I refused to pay for a CD. But I was able to luck out and grab a copy at a very reasonable price. So Grace Potter, Original Soul, my number 1 pickup of 2022. I hope you enjoyed that, folks. It's been a wonderful 2022. I'm looking forward to an even better 2023. Hope to continue bringing you interesting record and music stuff over the next year. please let me know in the comments what you think of some of these picks, or let me know what some of your top acquisitions of the last year were. I'd be very interested to hear it. Thank you for watching. Catch you on the flip side.